Hi, hey YouTube. Thanks a lot for joining us. Today we're going to talk about evolution through natural selection. I hope you enjoy it and that it's helpful to you. Evolution through natural selection. First of all, what's natural selection? Well, I've been out of school since 1984. That's when I graduated high school. So sometimes I need a refresher on these terms. So let's have a refresher on what natural selection is. Natural selection. Nature decides which animals will survive in a given environment. That's natural selection. A term that is synonymous with natural selection is survival of the fittest. You may have heard these terms before. They come to us via Charles Darwin, great scientist of old. Survival of the fittest says when animals in a given environment compete for the same resources, only the ones most fit for the environment will survive. Okay, so those are synonymous terms, natural selection and survival of the fittest. And here's an example of how that works. Just, of course, to refresh your memory if you've seen this before. Let's say we have a given environment, and in our environment it is getting increasingly cold. And let's say in our environment some of the food resources, or most of the food resources, are up high. And we have 3 dogs in our environment. Here are 2 of the dogs, and then I'll show you the 3rd dog in a minute. Well, if we have these 3 dogs in this environment, this tall dog here will be at least partially fit for the environment because he can get to some of those high food resources. He's tall. And our shaggy dog here will be at least partially fit for our environment because she's got this thick woolly coat to protect her from the cold weather, But then our 3rd dog, although our 3rd dog is very cute, right? He is unfortunately not fit for the environment that we just described because he doesn't have the long legs. He's not tall enough to get to many of the food resources. He doesn't have that shaggy coat to protect him from the increasingly cold weather. So he's not the fittest for this environment. So he's going to do one of 2 things. He's going to either die because he lacks the resources for warmth, the warm coat, and he lacks food resources. So animals that are not fit, like this guy, he's going to either die or he's going to choose to relocate to a different environment where he can find the resources he needs to survive. But the only animals that are going to survive, according to the idea of survival of the fittest, are the ones that are most fit for the environment. So these guys here get to survive, and they get to pass on, they get the privilege of passing on their DNA. They get to mate, have sexual intercourse, they get to pass on their DNA and the characteristics that allowed them to survive in the first place. She gets to pass on her nice fur coat, and he gets to pass on his long legs. And they get that privilege because they have been chosen by nature to survive. Natural selection. They've been selected by nature to be the ones that survive. And so when they do pass on their genetic codes, they will come up with something like this. This is their baby, their offspring, and she has long legs, so she's fit for the environment, and she has a nice fur coat that makes her fit for the environment. So she has more attributes than mom and dad. She's even more fit for this environment than mom or dad. And this is evolution through natural selection. This is how animals morph and change and have adaptations or changes in their characteristics over time. And that's natural selection. That's evolution via natural selection. Unfortunately, what's being taught in our public schools, elementary, middle, high school, even college, it's being passed off as evolution via natural selection, but it's really not. What we see taught most of all in our public schools is evolution through spontaneous mutation. Now that's a term that I think I just came up with. I don't know if anyone's ever used it before. But let me explain it to you. Evolution through spontaneous mutation just says that animals evolve and change their characteristics spontaneously. And they don't need natural selection to do it. For instance, modern evolutionary scientists say that the birds that we see flying around us every day evolved from reptiles. And spontaneously, the reptiles changed and metamorphosized into birds, okay, with no need of natural selection. So you see here, the reptile's foot slowly changes into a wing, slowly grows some feathers, and some more feathers, and some more feathers, gets a full wing and flies away. Here you see these reptiles down here. They gradually change. They grow some wings and some feathers. They have a complete metamorphosis, spontaneously turn into a bird, and they fly away by no need of sexual reproduction, no passing on of DNA, no passing on of characteristics via natural selection at all. Spontaneous mutation. Also with the fish, modern evolutionary scientists tell us that amphibians came to us by fish. The fish spontaneously mutated. There was no fish that mated with an amphibian and produced a half amphibian, half fish sort of thing. This fish just spontaneously mutated. This fin turned into a tail gradually, slowly. These fins turned into feet gradually, slowly, by no means of sexual reproduction, natural selection, passing on of DNA, or any characteristics. The last example I want to show you, I need to show you this first of all, is that we have 4 different types of vertebrates on our planet. Vertebrates are animals with backbones. We have fish, mammals, reptiles, birds, and amphibians. Those are the 4 classes, remember that word classes, 4 classes of vertebrates on our planet. Unfortunately, what's really scary and unfortunate is when you walk into a biology class, you see graphs like this. You see pictures like this. And your instructor will say, this is the evolutionary tree, this is how it all happened, and this shows one class of animal morphing into another class of animal. These are invertebrates. They have no backbone. These invertebrates morphed spontaneously into fish. Then these fish morphed spontaneously into amphibians, which morphed spontaneously into reptiles, which morphed spontaneously into birds. And from these reptiles, amphibians, fish, morphed mammals spontaneously. We know it had to happen spontaneously because you only have 2 choices. Either it happens spontaneously or it happens through natural selection and sexual reproduction. Okay? And they're saying, modern evolutionary science is saying, these mutations happen spontaneously because we know that they can't happen through sexual reproduction. All right, so let's look at these questions I have for people with an opposing view. Why don't you try answering these questions here? My first question, I don't know if you can see it, is it says, is spontaneous mutation or adaptation possible? My answer to this is no, it never happens. Adaptations require the sexual reproduction of natural selection. All right, you just don't get reptiles morphing into birds, and you don't get adaptations and changes in an animal's characteristic spontaneously without natural selection. It just doesn't happen. My other question is, some people say, well, maybe it happened by sexual reproduction then if it can't happen spontaneously. Well, then my question would be, can the sexual reproduction needed for natural selection occur between animals from different classes? So can a reptile mate with a bird and then produce something that's half reptile, half bird, and keep doing that until you get something that's all bird? Can a fish mate with an amphibian a number of times over and over until you get the morphing? No. The answer is no. It never happens. Animals may only reproduce within their own class. You can't mate different animals from different classes and get anything. You can try it as long as you want. You'll never get anything. It doesn't happen in or outside of a laboratory. Question number 3. Can animals adapt from one class to another? So can you have an animal changing from one class of animal to another? It just doesn't happen. No, it never happens. Natural selection only occurs within classes and never across classes of animals. You'll see natural selection occur within mammals, changes and adaptations within mammals, within fish, within birds, but never across the classes. 2 more questions. Does the addition of millions of years change anything about how natural selection works or how adaptations are achieved. All right? The answer is no. Addition of millions of years changes nothing. That's the solution that so many scientists have. Well, no, it doesn't happen. Yes, these are impossibilities. But if you add millions and millions of years, then maybe these impossibilities become possibilities. And it just doesn't. And the last question. Will your professor welcome these types of questions? My answer is no. They will likely try to talk down to you and make you look foolish in front of the class. Or they will insult your religious views, and both of these techniques are done in an effort to deflect the questions and change the subject. If I can get the whole class laughing at you or something like that, then I can change the subject and I don't have to answer these hard questions. So if you are interested in answering these questions, let's not resort to downing anyone's religion or making fun of anyone or being condescending. If you want to put some comments and answer a question, just specify which question you're answering. I'm answering question number 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, and then go ahead and proceed to answer the question in an adult way, and so we can have that discussion. Okay, so I hope that this was helpful and not too offensive to those with the opposing view, and God bless you, and we'll see you on the next video.